This is the Our Voices Matter project. I'm here with Don Mullins, who I'm going to interview. My name is Anna Quon. The date is September 22nd, 2010, and we're here at the Belmont House in Dartmouth. Hi, Don.
How are you? Nice to meet you.
Fine, thank you. And you?
Wow.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, where you were born?
I was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Yeah. And when were you born?
January 1st, 1951.
January 1st?
I mean January 18th.
January 18th, okay. And what was it like growing up in your family?
Challenging.
Mm-hmm.
My family consists of 11 children, and I'm a twin, identical twin, which presented some problems. Back in the early years, just after the war, there were different attitudes than there are today, by far. Mental illness wasn't understood at all. And having a disability on top of that, right? And I had a father who, for lack of a better word, was a bigot. He was an abuser, and he didn't want his neighbors to know he had a disabled child. And the first word of his mouth to my mother was that no disabled child of mine is going to live under my roof. So for many years they kept me hid away. And well, it's hard to say, I never went to school. I was considered retarded. But my main illness, my main health issue is cerebral palsy, which also wasn't understood but was recognized. From there, it was very difficult to live with a twin who you couldn't socialize. The only time I was allowed outside was when the kids were in school. I used to play under the front steps and pretend I was in school. And I didn't have any friends because he didn't want anybody to know he had a child such as mine. So then I had to go up in the attic and stay up there. And when I say attic, I don't mean just an attic per se. It had a bed in it, and it had steps going up to it, but there wasn't much comfort. And this is very difficult for a child to see all their brothers and sisters have a life and stuff. It changed when I got in the Nova Scotia hospital many years later, but nobody knew about it. They did become aware of it at some stage of the game. I think when I was 6 or 7, and then I went to reassess and labeled retarded. They said I was never trained to do anything. I could never have the capability, because he didn't understand a lot of things back then. So because of that was the outcome. So nobody really wanted to do anything. It's okay to stay home. I got depressed, had a big chip on my shoulder, felt very much suicidal. And in the end, I ended up in the Nova Scotia hospital for trying to commit suicide too much.
How old were you then?
I would be, and I'm guessing because I'm not good with dates, but I would say 7.
7?
Yeah.
Your first suicide attempt?
I believe so, yeah.
And were you hospitalized after that attempt?
Not for many times. My family kept it quiet, but when I was older, I mean around 16, I went and tried to jump off the ferry. That became public, and from there I went to Nova Scotia Hospital, and I remained there for at least a year. And they didn't give me any drugs. Their treatment for me was to put me in N13, which was a behavioral ward, and to talk to me every day, a specific person. And then we just talked like you and I are talking, and learning to be me, finding who I was. So I'd come back and ask questions, and through that process I gained confidence and understanding, and it worked really well. Well, my family couldn't come visit me. Nobody was allowed to see me. If I wanted to go to my sister's party, I had to earn so many points in order to go there. But that was a long time.
So the N13 was at the Nova Scotia Hospital?
Yes, yes it was.
Okay. So you weren't put on any medication while you were in hospital?
No, they felt it was more understanding my feelings and trying to bring me into the mainstream of living.
Right.
So I lacked that skill.
Right. And that was at age 16?
Age 16. These are approximate ages, right?
Okay, sure.
Because I blocked it out for so many times. That's how I can do what I do today. And just and out of that came the caring for other people and the work I do today in lots of ways, right?
Right. So, did you have any inkling of having a mental health problem before this happened? Like, how did you?
That just compounded things, because my father was such a attitude-wise that he didn't even want to hear about it. They weren't allowed to talk about it, and my brothers and sisters would say, "Where's Donnie?" and they would make up stories and pretend, right?
Okay. Yeah. So when you were in the hospital for that year and a half and you were discharged, where did you go?
I went to what they call a group home on Walnut Street, and I was there for about another year. And when I went to leave, when I was I can go out and live on my own, they wanted to see how I do. There was a friend I met there who today I live with. So my life has just been pretty straightforward in that sense.
Right. And is that your friend Eric?
Eric Mitchell, yeah.
Okay.
When we decided to leave for time, we agreed to look out for each other and always support each other, no conditions. And we've stepped by those principles.
Okay. So, was it a positive experience being in the, or a negative experience being in the group home?
Back then, group homes were new. I think I found it positive. I'm sure there weren't a lot that didn't, because they wanted to be home wherever they were before, but I had no home to go to,
Right.
per se, so I found it positive.
Maybe I could go back to your time in the hospital. It sounds like you had fairly regular contact with the staff
Yes.
that was talking to you.
Yeah.
What was it like in hospital for you for that year and a half?
Well, prior to that year and a half, there was a series of being treated, release, so I kept doing what I was doing. And in the end, how I got N13 long term was the doctor said, either you're going to stay here and go out and be positive, or you're going to end up in Cole Harbour. So I chose to stay there, and that's how they really started taking me serious, and I stayed. I found that was my last and only time in Nova Scotia Hospital. I was never in hospital since.
Wow, all right. And you mentioned your brothers and sisters wondering where you were. What was your relationship like with your brothers and sisters and your mother?
My mother, we were close, but if she upset the apple cart, if everybody didn't follow what he said, then they bore the brunt too, right? So, not to want to be the source point, we really tried to keep it, because I had a sister that was in a fire. I have a sister with several disabilities, right? And but he didn't see them as disabilities, like a fire or asthma and those kind of things, right? You could tell I had a disability because the way I walked and stuff, right?
Okay. So, after you got out of the hospital, you went to the group home, and how long was it that you were there?
About a year.
A year, okay. And then, when you left the group home, can you tell me more about that?
We got me and my friend got a room, and then we basically lived there by Canadian Tire on Cooper Road for a while, and then we moved from apartment to apartment and stuff. We were pretty stable. We often stayed 10 years or so in one place. I did work quite a bit, and I did okay, but it's an everyday challenge dealing with, like I wouldn't answer a phone, because I didn't know what a phone was, in the way, because, you know, you've never been part of that life, right? You know, it's different.
Yeah, you never knew what a phone was.
No.
Wow.
Well, because, you know, they knew, but, you know, my father, when they come home from school, he rushed me back upstairs.
Right. Okay. Have you, like, since you were in the hospital that time and then in the group home, have you ever suffered from depression again, or?
They put me on this medication, and I think it's speed, but I don't know what it is, but it gives me energy, but it also takes away the depression.
Okay.
So I don't think I have a real depression.
Okay.
Yes, I've suffered from depressions in my day. That's why I would take the pills all the time, right? The last time I was in the hospital, I left Nova Scotia Hospital at 9 in the morning. By 10 that night, I was gone the whole system and back into the hospital.
Okay. Right. So, while you're living in the community, since that first time in the hospital and the group home, have there been any supports that have made a big difference to you?
My supports are largely that they don't know my past. They just see me as now. I've only told 3 people. And my father moved to Ontario the day after he turned 65. It took the whole family. They said, "You're staying here." So the only person I have here now that's family is my sister Joan.
Okay. So, and do you have other supports that are not family?
I have connections. I used to go to Carrie and Sharon a lot. They were a good support.
Okay.
So.
And when you say connections, do you mean Connections Clubhouse?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And have you ever experienced emergency help, like soup kitchens, food banks, shelters, police lockup, mobile crisis unit?
I know about them because of my job, but I've never been in Kelowna. I've gone to the Turning Point and stayed overnight to work with people. I often go down there to talk to people at nighttime.
Okay. Right. Can you tell me about your work?
My work is about helping people on a face to face, and sometimes it requires listening, sometimes it requires help with housing, and whatever their need is, regardless if they're a member or not, where I work. As long as they live in HRM, and I do take people outside of HRM occasionally, I try to work to help give them confidence and build beyond the stumbling blocks.
Right. Okay. And is that paid work, volunteer
No,
work?
it's all volunteer.
All volunteer. And you've had other kinds of jobs as well?
Okay, I worked at the YMCA, became supervisor. I worked there for a long time, about 5 years.
Okay.
I worked at the Halsey, became involved with the union quite a lot, for about another 10 years. Because once I let my past go, decide to go forward, right, and really build on that. You know, they said I was retired and all that. I felt I could manage, and I feel I have.
Okay. And what was the sort of turning point that made you realize you could have a?
Well, I had that whole year at a hospital,
Yeah.
with no real family, and just positive input, right? And the reason why they put me in 13 was so I could appreciate how bad life could be for people.
Right.
That was the message of it, right?
Yeah.
You could be one of these people. In 13 was rather a floor where people were just lost. You couldn't communicate with them very well, and and they varied, but it was mostly to say these people don't have a life either, and they're managing, but not much of a life. You have a chance to build on yours.
Right, right. Were you told that explicitly?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So I know I'm jumping all over the place, but when you were in hospital among people who, as you say, were lost, did you make any long-term connections with those people, or?
I'm sure, knowing my personality, I'm sure I made contact, but they were there for a long time too, right? That's long-term floor. And there were some individuals that weren't similar to me in some ways. So I made some contacts.
Okay. What about your spiritual life? Like, do you have, is that an important part of your life?
It is, but I used to go to church and my mother was Jehovah's Witness, and that created a lot of problems. So I prayed a lot, I still pray a lot, and I actually, sometimes when I lived in Timberley, I would walk the railroad crossing because I wasn't good at making friends because I lacked the skills for comfort, right? So I would think aloud, or particularly on the train tracks, we were just quiet and just nobody around. I could just voice my opinion, not holler or screech, just think aloud and give perspective. So I believe, and I do it all the time, that you can talk to God or say prayers at any point. He hears you wherever you're at.
Right.
I've gone to churches. They've been positive, but I haven't gone on a regular basis.
Okay. How would you characterize your personal life right now? Is it good, bad, helpful, lacking? What kind of words would you use?
I would say I've done quite well, and I find it quite good. My person that stays with me, we're a very close friend. He's a challenge with health, but I'm very fortunate.
Okay. What kind of challenges have you faced, and do you still face living in the community?
My biggest challenge in the community is understanding the disabled. We still have ways to go. I say most people see people in a chair or some other type of disability and think good about it, but you don't feel the pity. The pity that goes with, oh, that poor boy.
Right. Do you have any leisure activities, like hobbies or things you enjoy doing that help you stay well?
Oh, I have pretty many. Mostly, I watch certain shows and stuff that I appreciate. But what makes me stay well is the challenge the challenge to interact with other people and to see the difference they can make if you can support them.
Right. Okay.
That's very self-rewarding.
Have you experienced discrimination due to your mental illness ever?
Yes. I've been robbed a couple times and different things, and it's because of what they think of people. Yes, and my way of dealing with those kind of things is to think a simple thing, that's their issue, not mine. I'm me, they don't know me. They just judge you, right?
Right. So when you say that you were robbed and it was because of your mental illness, was it when you weren't doing so well, or how did it sort of happen?
A combination of things, but largely due to the fact that I try to be somewhat nice and I get used, and then they told their friends and then they set me up and robbed me.
Oh, okay. And do you experience poverty? Can I ask where your income?
My income is $636 a month.
Not the amount, but just where you get
Canada
your
pension,
income?
disability.
Pension. Okay.
But I also live in housing, so my rent's not that much.
Okay, that's good to know. So have you found that housing support important to your well-being?
Well, I used to live in preparatory for many years, and I worked in the McDonald building, so I was very hesitant to go into housing. But the answer, I would say, is yes, because without making those changes in earlier days, then I'd probably be on the streets today. They could never afford the rents.
Right. Okay. Have you, you said you worked in several places, and the place where you volunteer right now is called Dial?
Disabled Individuals Alliance.
Okay. And am I right in saying that you do advocacy work there?
That is our biggest part. The other thing, we have social programs instead of that for the members.
Okay, and what kind of social programs?
Swimming, we have Christmas dinners, we have men's night, women's night, lots of activities, right?
Okay.
Because I believe that you can't be well unless you have a balance of both.
Right. Okay. And what about your family? Are you in contact with them?
Oh yeah, my father passed away, and my mother had died a few years before that. So now the whole family is more like a family. I talked to my brother last night. He drives a truck and he's all over the States, but yeah, we're much closer.
Right. You said you were one of identical twins?
Yes.
Did your twin brother have any disability?
Yeah, he had a speech problem and he couldn't read very well.
Okay. And how, does your family feel the same way as you about the way your father treated you, or his attitude towards you?
Yeah, well, he's also abused my sister sexually and other things that are now coming out. We didn't know this, but as our sisters are getting older and stuff, there's a lot of resentment towards my father all the way around.
Okay. When you were young and you first were attempting suicide, what were you thinking about at that time?
Loneliness and being different, and not knowing why.
Right. And is that do you blame your father for those feelings you experienced?
I blame his attitude, his ego, very much so. The day my mother died, because when she moved to Ontario, she was in the hospital there, and my father had been retired when he moved up there. So then he found, I call her a girlfriend, and he was standing outside with his new girlfriend, as he knew his wife was 2 floors up. And she saw that. So he wasn't a nice person.
Okay, you told me about an important relationship in your life with your friend Eric. Do you have other important relationships in your community that help you?
Many. I have many people. People I work with, different groups I belong to, different. I'm enriched very much.
Okay. Is there anything you would change if you could go back in your life and do something different?
If I knew what I knew now, then I'd be more assertive.
More assertive. Okay. So, do you consider yourself as a person living with a mental illness now?
Yes.
Okay. And you take medication, you mentioned?
Yes. I take a lot of medication.
Okay.
But it keeps me well.
Right. Okay. And it sounds like the quality of your life with a mental illness has changed over time.
I understand it better. And I know I need plenty of rest, like what most people would consider normal. But there's just once you understand something, my illness, cerebral palsy, is now starting to change, which we all thought it would never change, right? But in the old days, they said, if what you have now is what you'll have all your life. Most people turning my age, because we're the first group, are experiencing a number of things, right?
Yeah.
So it's understanding enough to know what's good and bad, right?
Right. Okay. And so you have, you live with cerebral palsy, and you also live with a mental illness. How do you think those two things together affect your quality of life?
I definitely think, well, the cerebral palsy put me in a chair, taking away my freedom to independently walk. Largely, that's one thing for that. And the mental illness affects my good days and bad days. It's becoming now days where I can't just go. I have to rest and do things to stay well. I never had that to this degree before.
Okay.
But now it's common out of a month to lose 10 days to the illness.
Okay. And that's due to, you said, the mental illness?
Well, yeah, and I'm starting to experience a bit more depression and stuff, because I'm scared of what's going to come next.
Oh, okay. And when you say you're scared of what comes next, is that to do with aging with disability?
That's part of it, but the bigger part is when you've been told things for years, and all of a sudden you're being told that that's, we don't know what to expect from here. And I've talked to many people with this kind of illness, and they're in the same boat. It doesn't make you feel very comfortable, secure.
Right. When you say talking about your illness, and you don't know where you'll go from there, is that the cerebral palsy you're talking about? Like how
the cerebral palsy I hope I could manage, but having the two together may, at some point, I believe, put me in nursing care.
Okay. Have you found that your physical disability has had a lot of effect on your mental health in ways, for example, like if there were places that were inaccessible, like mental health clinics that were inaccessible, or doctor's offices?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. But it's better. We've come a long way in the past 15 years.
Right.
But we still have a long ways to go. Connections is a fine example. I have to do everything I do now has to be on the first floor. So they have something on the second floor I'm unable to attend. Carrying insuring, I wasn't in a wheelchair, but a lot of people are going back to carrying insuring due to the changes. It's a small place, so I would be in the way there.
Oh, okay.
Because the carrying insuring club itself is not that big, and with all these new members coming in, I would be in their way.
Oh.
So I'm victimized once again.
Is that something you've been told, or is that your personal feeling about it, or?
Well, I was there 10 years before, when they were up in the other space, but I was walking.
Right.
Now that I'm not walking, I've been there, and I'm going there next week for the party for what's the name. But on a regular basis, my common sense tells me that room full of people, especially meal night or something big, would be a real challenge. They are looking for new space to help me to get it, so I'm waiting for that to happen.
Right, okay. Aging with a physical disability and a mental illness, do you see that as like having a double whammy kind of thing, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've created a real positive approach to life, and that's two tier. One tier is I've always get my work, and I think that makes a difference. It makes me feel better and helps me understand them and me. Second tier is I can't change. I have to only accept or find ways to work with whatever comes my way. And that's my core belief. So it doesn't get the better of me.
Right. How does helping other people, for example, through Dial, how does that help, and how does that affect your mental health?
Well, in two ways. Again, I see how life can affect all ages, and how bad it can really be. It's a good feeling giving of yourself, whether it's knowledge or support or whatever. You get back more than you give. I'm only given time and knowledge. Their feelings, when I hear back in return, just where they're coming from, is so rewarding.
Right. Do you have a mental health professional who sees you now?
I used to see Dr. McDonald, a psychiatrist, but they discharged him because of a personal issue with the patient. I've gone to Jim Moulton at the Abbey Lane for a long time, and he's now changed. So I'm in the midst of now looking for somebody to take his place.
Okay.
And that's a challenge nowadays with the cutbacks.
Yeah, right. How does that affect you not having a therapist currently?
It makes the days that are bad that much worse, because you can't pick up a phone and say, do I need medication changed or not? I have a family doctor I've known now for a long time, and he's pretty good. But I'm falling through the cracks in that respect.
Okay. What do you think could help you in that situation? Like, are there any resources you can go to get help for, like, finding a therapist or?
Well, my name is on what they call a list at the Abbey Lane. But there's such a great need for doctors of all types that I've asked not to be. If there's somebody who needs it more, just always put them first. Because I'm managing. I haven't been in a hospital. I do activities pretty well every day, to speak, right? Like I now have bowel problems and they've become real issues and stuff. But I'm still getting through the day, and I mean, as you talk to me, you can see I have a strong, positive attitude, and I have a quality of life. There are people out there that especially street people, that need the doctors, right?
Right. Okay. Looking back on your life, what are some of the changes that you've seen in the mental health system from the time when you first had contact with it?
I see it's grown a lot.
The mental health system has grown, or people, like more people with diagnoses?
Demands on the system.
Or demands.
And I see the health system trying to provide, but there's nowhere near funding or support for staff. People are having to wait longer, and with some tragic results. People are fighting. It's the biggest task I think we all have is to get the government to listen to us in a serious way and to build a long-range plan.
Right. Okay. Are you involved with any mental health-related organizations, like besides as a member or a client of social clubs? Are there any mental health organizations where you?
I talk to CMHA a lot, Mark Murray and a few others. I support them, and we meet at many meetings. We cross paths.
Right.
She knows my belief on understanding their need and support it.
Right.
I talked to Megan Leslie on several occasions about what I see out there.
Right.
And stuff.
When you look back on your life, are there any particular people in your life? You mentioned Eric, your friend Eric. But are there other like health professionals or supportive people that stand out for you?
In time of need, yeah, there are. Susan here has been a huge impression on me. She's helped me a lot. So is Gail Kelly.
Okay, and where do they?
Well, now Susan, they were at Connections,
Okay.
but Susan here now is overseeing the emergency, I believe, of the Abbey Lane.
Okay.
She's a very informed person and very caring, and I often talk to her. And a lot of the nurses at Connections I get very personally close with.
Okay. Now, do you do any spiritual practices? I know you said you believe in God, but do you do any like exercises or meditation or that kind of thing to stay well?
I do acupuncture.
Acupuncture. Okay. And where do you get your acupuncture?
Through connections. We go up to the church and do it.
Okay. And how does that help?
Relaxes me. I don't, particularly time, it helps me keep calm.
Right. Okay. And let's see. I know you said you experienced discrimination due to your mental illness. Has that changed over time? Have you seen a change in the way you're treated?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Both as a mental health and as well as being disabled in a chair. They're, in large part, they're becoming quite acceptance and understanding.
Right. Okay. Have any of the more recent developments in, for example, the Involuntary Psychiatric Treatment Act or the Mental Health Commission of Canada, have they impacted your life in any way?
No, I've never been. I haven't had to be in hospital.
Right. Okay. How would you describe yourself? Like, mental health consumer is one word. Is that a word that you would talk about yourself with?
If I met a stranger, how would I describe myself? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure.
I'm a consumer.
Consumer.
What you say. I find that less tension of a word, and it's more understanding by the community.
Right. Okay. And what do you find now helps you get through a difficult time?
If it's a real bad time, to go next door and just laying back and thinking of my childhood. You know, it was bad. My mother was there, and I could think of what she taught me, what I stood for. That makes me feel closer. I always feel close to my mother, but I think she understands how I feel, and through that I get through it.
Right. Okay. I guess my final question would be, what advice do you have for friends, family, mental health practitioners on how to help a person experiencing mental illness?
Is the question, what
advice you would give them? People that want to
patience
help?
and understanding.
Patience and understanding. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to add, Donald?
I think the doctors are more trained and better understood these days, but they need to understand there are a core group of people with mental illness that don't follow the norm, and those people, that's what they need to understand. You stick with them and go down the path together.
Right. When you say don't follow the norm, do you mean someone who has a dual diagnosis or that kind of thing? Yeah.
Normally, when you have schizophrenia, you act within a boundary in a certain way. But there are some people who have that illness who just don't. They may have it, and they may have the symptoms and otherwise, but just don't follow. It doesn't work for them. They need to stick with them longer and more hands-on.
Okay. And what would be your sort of words about living with both a physical and a mental disability? Like, what would your advice be to people?
Teach them to work with them to become their own person. Give them lots of support in all forms, and be patient. Because you may take X number of months to get to a certain point. Some people may take far more.
Right.
We shouldn't just let them go, right?
Okay. And what else? Is there anything you'd like to add to your story?
I think from my day, right, we're all called dysfunctional families, and I think there are a great many of them in one way or another. Like, I'm not a person who can touch another person. I won't let anybody hug me or get that close to my body, and that's because I've never experienced love in that sense. And,
Okay.
it's part of life. I mean, it was tough times, and today's world, they've come a long way. Right?
That's good to hear.
What can I say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.